There's a joke about video game soundtracks that's been circulating constantly in some form or another for probably decades. It's hard not to notice that the music of certain biomes tends to be similar across games. Snow level equals sleigh bells and glockenspiel. Haunted house equals organ and theremin. Jungle level equals African percussion. Desert level equals something vaguely Middle Eastern, or sometimes Mexican. These are well-known rules of game music design, and if you violate them, the police come and take your video game developer license away.
We all know what a snow level or a desert level or a water level sound like. But what does a city level sound like? Well, it sounds like this. If water levels are soft acoustics and forest levels are breezy woodwind, then city levels are bombastic brass. They're a swing band, a jazz quartet. They're the snap of a rim shot, the zing of a trumpet, the swirl of a saxophone, the exuberant strum of electric guitar. If it doesn't make your toe tap, is it even a city level?
Yet despite their soundtracks being just as tropey as any other biome, city levels in games are fairly rare. And I think it's because there's a unique challenge to designing a city level. Snowy mountains and forests and volcanoes aren't places we tend to call home. So there's no work to do here to sell you on the idea of exploration. I can personally verify, having been to a real-life lava level, that a volcano is an inherently strange and exciting place to visit.
But a city? A city is just where most people on the planet live. Not someplace exotic and far away, not somewhere you go to have an adventure or a holiday. It's where you go to work. When we think of cities, we may think exhaustion and pollution and traffic jams and elevator rides seasoned with the rich tang of a dozen strangers' smelly armpits. Desmond Morris once said, "The city is not a concrete jungle. It's a human zoo." So what do you do with all that if you want to make this into a fun video game level? How do you make a city into an adventure?
It is an immense joy to set up house in the heart of the multitude, amid the ebb and flow of movement, in the midst of the fugitive and the infinite. To be away from home and yet to feel oneself everywhere at home. To see the world. To be at the centre of the world and yet to remain hidden from the world. Impartial natures which the tongue can but clumsily define.
Artistic depictions of big city life have existed ever since there have been big cities. Industrialisation brought an unprecedented level of urban growth, large-scale changes in technology and infrastructure, and mass migration into urban centres. By the mid-19th century, the post-industrial big city had made its way into literature and art, and many of these artists and writers weren't impressed. How ugly Paris seems after a year's absence. How one chokes in these dark, narrow and dank corridors that we like to call the streets of Paris. Cities, like forests, have their dens in which their vilest and most terrible monsters hide. But in cities, what hides this way is ferocious, unclean and petty. That is to say, ugly. But then there was Charles Baudelaire. His essay, The Painter of Modern Life, was written in 19th century Paris, and not all his writings have aged well, especially those about women, whom he described as a kind of idol, stupid perhaps, but dazzling and bewitching. It's when he enters the realm of pure vibes that he comes out with stuff that hasn't aged a day. Passages about watching the river of life flow past in all its splendor and majesty, the turmoil of human freedom, the eternal beauty and amazing harmony of life in the capital cities. While their romantic contemporaries were often afield somewhere worshipping nature, writers like Baudelaire and Edgar Allan Poe, and painters like Pissarro and Monet saw something magical in cities, an intoxicating dynamism that they painstakingly brought to life on canvas and on the page. For me, though, there's one art form that transports me instantly into the irreplaceable majesty of a big city. And that thing is music. The best city-themed musical tracks in a video game are to be found in a game that isn't set in a big city. In fact, it's not even set on Earth. It takes place in an alternate reality demonic paradise fueled by god energy and occupied by just a few hundred people. And yet, Paradise Killer is, for my money, the best soundtrack out there when it comes to evoking the feel of a city. Paradise Killer's soundtrack can be pretty cleanly divided into two types of song. The first is cheesy, jazzy city pop, music that makes you want to stare into the sun. And that's the game's words, not mine. These tunes seem deliberately designed to be the perfect BPM to strut to, custom made to be blasted into your ears while you're striding purposefully down a sidewalk wearing your most stylish shades. But Paradise Killer is far from the only soundtrack to capture the feel of the city. Super Mario Odyssey is one of my less favourite 3D Mario games. It's great, but most of the levels feel small and underwhelming, and the soundtrack is pretty mid compared to the timeless tunes of 64 or Galaxy. But none of that is true of the best level in Odyssey, a New York-inspired mini city where you can scale scaffolding, zip along power lines, and fling yourself to the tops of skyscrapers with ease. New Donk City captures a similar vibe to the soundtrack of Paradise Killer, something I can best describe as an irresistible invitation to action. It's full to the brim with interactability. Literally everything can be grabbed or boinked or bounced on. The people who live here, basically one step away from being lemmings in bowler hats, totter around and jabber in a weird kind of Simlish, and even they can be bounced on. Then there's the Pedestrian, a puzzle game in which you control a stick figure in its journey between street signs and other pieces of urban landscape, opening paths by maneuvering the panels you're in to manipulate the play space. It's not technically a city level, it's a game set in a city, but it channels the same electric hum as Odyssey's New Donk City, even using some of the same iconography of traffic cones and construction materials, a testament to the eternal nuisance that is construction zones in a major city. The most notable song on its soundtrack is what I imagine a city would sound like if a city could sing. The game takes place over a single day, and at one point, in the rush of high noon, you emerge in the streets above to one of the snazziest tunes I've ever heard, in a video game or otherwise. There's so much I love about this music. I love the way it changes to a tinnier version when you're indoors, like it's being piped through speakers. And then ramps back up again when you emerge back onto the street. Like the music is the voice of the city itself, speaking its own funky language of sunlight and steel and sax, singing of never-ending movement and joyful purpose. Baudelaire wrote his essay a century and a half ago, But I find those exact vibes right here in these games and their soundtracks. The hum in the air, the sense of sheer possibility, the realization that a city is at its best a promise. That if you immerse yourself in the rhythm of this place, you might just stumble into something wonderfully unexpected in the midst of the fugitive and the infinite. One of the things that makes these games so special is the way they subvert the familiar. New Donk City provides you with plenty of recognisable pieces of landscape, only to joyously recontextualise them. Taxis can be bounced on, coins bling out of traffic lights, bollards fling you in whichever direction you please. Odyssey references the daily grind of a city, only to upend it. Here is an almost literal human zoo, a crowd of people shuttling to and from work in a stream of grey. But you can soar above all that drudgery. One timed challenge requiring you to literally jump over a never-ending gush of office workers. Bless these little donks. Just for today, you don't need to be one of them. In a similar way, the Pedestrian allows you to both immerse yourself in the wonderful turmoil of a city and exist outside it. Although you journey past familiar scenes of daily life in a city, the whir of a factory line, the whoosh of a subway, you aren't bound by any of that. You are on your own track, at the centre of the world, and yet hidden from the world.
There's a wonderful feeling of transgression in both these environments that's not present in levels set in natural biomes.
Odyssey's skyscrapers don't just provide a glorious verticality, they let you break the usual rules of city living. In real cities, rooftops and top floors are often cordoned off, only accessible to rich VIPs. But in Odyssey, you can scale an office block in a matter of seconds and then come crashing down onto a fancy poolside terrace and no one will dare stop you. The Pedestrian 2 is a game about not being where you're supposed to be. The gameplay is a series of impossible escapes, every puzzle solved a jailbreak that lets you leave the frame entirely. Throughout the game, you even tamper with electronics and sneak into the transit system to activate trains while the conductor's back is turned. In these games, you're not just escaping the daily grind, you're messing with it in what feels like a small act of rebellion, a license to break free and rediscover joy in what can often be a fairly joyless place.
Baudelaire and his contemporaries and their fascination with the city would go on to inspire everything from street photography to urban cinema to, eventually, psychogeography, a revolutionary movement that arose in the 1950s. Psychogeography aimed not only to understand the psychological and emotional effects of the built environment on the individuals who lived there, but also to rebel against the sometimes restrictive architecture of the city. The movement advocated for an active and authentic relationship with urban space, emphasizing freedom and play, using methods such as dérive, the practice of wandering spontaneously through a city, guided by its sights, sounds, smells, and textures.
It's a perfect summer day in Melbourne, and for my dérive today, I've chosen the northeast end of the CBD as my launching point, because usually when I'm in the CBD I tend to loiter around the south side and the west side is all just boring legal buildings and office blocks, so I thought the northeast end would give me the best chance of seeing things that I don't normally see. So let's go. When wandering during a dérive, it's critical that you not follow habit or routine, or do any tasks that you might normally do. You need to just let go of all of those ties to your everyday life. You should also resist the temptation to follow the easiest or the most obvious route. You really need to feel just completely free to wander in whichever direction you like, to just go with the flow. I've been walking for, it feels like 20-25 minutes, and I feel good. I feel invigorated. I was tired when I started this thing and I almost didn't do it, but I pushed forward, and now look at these little guys. Bunch of seagulls just enjoying the shade. And now I've got a really good pace. My legs feel like they're just going of their own volition, and I feel like I could go all day. I feel like I've got hours still in me. Just that feel of not having to do anything. Like I'm just out here enjoying myself, having fun, being in the moment. It's exhilarating. It's lovely. A guy called Guy Debord actually wrote down some pretty specific guidelines in 1956 as to how best to conduct a délire. In his opinion, cities were much better than the countryside because they offered the necessary variety and sensory stimulation. He preferred to do it in small groups of 2 or 3 people each. He also noted that storms or other types of precipitation are rather favourable for délires. Dude knew that rain is a vibe. That's not happening today though. The practice of délire and the movements it was a part of were meant to bring a sense of adventure into the city, to make the simple act of existing in an urban space more playful. Debord explicitly referred to délire as a great game, an idea of the city as a playground that would be built on further by disciplines like free running and parkour, and then translated into video games. The idea is that by intentionally deviating from the familiar and the expected, by interacting dynamically with a space, you disrupt the monotony of daily life, actively subverting the idea of a city as just a place of commerce and consumerism. It's a kind of small rebellion to wander in this way, to reclaim this space by moving freely and joyfully within it. To be, in the words of one writer, a deliberately aimless pedestrian. The first type of track on Paradise Killer's soundtrack is the other is Paradise Killer's vaporwave tracks are something else. This is music to listen to while driving all night on an endless highway under a technicolor sky. It's concrete cooling in the twilight. It's cocktails under the stars. It's the sound of a city at night. Sometimes when I'm walking through the city at night, I'll put on Leaving or Lady Blue or Headlights on the Shore and let the impressions of an imagined city blend into the real one, making the streets and lights around me feel more magical, more mysterious, just somehow more alive.
But now it is evening. It is that strange, equivocal hour when the curtains of heaven are drawn and the cities light up. The gaslight makes a stain upon the crimson of the sunset. The artist will be the last to linger wherever there can be a glow of light, an echo of poetry, a quiver of life, or a chord of music. Wherever a passion can pose before him, wherever natural man and conventional man display themselves in a strange beauty.
In the Pedestrian, after rush hour has passed and you've taken some shade from the late afternoon sun, you step into a lift and re-emerge on a rooftop. It's a moment I've already talked about because it just gets me. The neon lights, the steaming vents, the patter of precipitation around you. Rain is indeed a vibe. This whole rooftop section reminds me of amazing nights I've spent chilling out in beautiful cities. Wandering Berlin at night, cruising along the Brisbane River under neon-lit bridges, strolling beneath illuminated sakura blossoms at a night market in Tokyo. The photos and videos I attempt to take of these moments are, at best, wholly inadequate, at worst, just plain terrible. And in every case, they completely fail at capturing the feeling of being there. But you know what does capture that feeling? New Donk City also has a nighttime sequence, and it's one of Super Mario Odyssey's best bits. One moment you're grooving to the sounds of a jazz band at City Hall, playing, well, what else? And then suddenly, in a surprise set piece, the city transforms into an extravaganza of light and sound, with you as the special guest, a crowd of little soup people cheering you on. What follows is a sequence of 2D platforming framed by steel girders and spotlights, and even a recreation of the first level of the original Donkey Kong, all set to the game's signature musical track.
Come on and jump up in the air, jump without a care, jump up 'cause you know that I'll be there.
I'm not joking when I say I teared up at this silly little sequence. I was moved by the way it brought together the sheer joy of music, play, and spectacle in a loving homage to the history of Mario and to something else as well. The vibrance and zest of a raucous city at night. The kind of festival atmosphere that makes complete strangers hug each other under the blast of fireworks on New Year's Eve. The carefree way these guys just hang out on their balconies. So reminiscent of people I've seen lazily watching street festivals from rooftops and apartment balconies. What strikes me is that while all three of these games generally converge on the same jazzy daytime energy, their after dark vibes all feel completely different and completely right. The contagious cheer of New Donk's festival reminds me of a dozen street parties I've been to, but the Pedestrian seems to distill the gentle buzz of a city at night into something more lovely and picturesque than any encounter I've actually had. Because where the hell am I going to get access to a city rooftop with a great view where there aren't also like 50 other people around and loud music blaring? The sounds of Paradise Killer, though, distill a city even further into something I struggle to find words for, only impressions. Neon smoke, heat rising off pavement, salt on skin, sweat on glass, a feeling of unbearable regret and limitless potential. The essence of a city at night is, in the end, ineffable. When perusing what people have written about cities, you often come across the city as a metaphor, referred to as anything from a zoo to a living organism. But one of the most common types of metaphor for a city is best encapsulated in a famous quote by John Kennedy, describing New York as not a noun, but a verb. And this notion of cities as verbs seems too relevant not to bring up here. I've read cities described metaphorically as palettes, as canvases, as theatres, as storybooks, as soundtracks, as tapestries, as symphonies. But what all these descriptions have in common is that they are all things that we, the inhabitants of large cities, are active participants in creating.
Every day, we are painters, writers, artists, players on the grand stage of the city streets. That's what city levels mean to me. It's why New Donk's rich playground of interactivity hits different from other level types, because unlike them, a city's beauty and wonder is created directly by us.
Cities also don't just exist outside us, but within us, as impressions and memories, often distorted by nostalgia, but no less beautiful for it. Maybe that's why I'm not that interested in games' ability to capture individual cities in photorealistic detail. If technical brilliance is what you're into, then there's no shortage of stunning facsimiles of historically accurate facades or far future cyberpunk sprawls. But these experiences, they feel different. These cities opt for essence and abstraction over specifics. Heck, the pedestrian city is never even named. And because they don't need to adhere to reality or realism, they can get at something else. They feel like a perfect cocktail of moments I've had in cities and moments I dream of having in a city. So, what makes a city level? For what it's worth, here's my answer. It needs to capture that impossibly large tapestry of sight and sound, the bustle of rush hour, the gleam of metal, the roar of thousands of lives crisscrossing. It should also allow you to break the constraints of everyday life and become a noble saboteur, finding play and transgression in the most unlikely place. Most of all, you should just feel it. That electrifying thrum of countless encounters waiting for you to come and find them. The sense of opportunity around every corner.
We tend to think of water and ice and fire levels as elemental levels. But a city is no less elemental. Not really. Its element is human life, vibrance, energy, action, steel, concrete, cacophony, possibility. It's a swing band, a jazz quartet, a rimshot, a trumpet, a saxophone, an electric guitar, a riotous frenzy of sound and movement and colour played by us.
Some would say that taking numerous forays into the city in the harsh Australian summer sun is not worth it for one video on the internet. But I'll let you be the judge. If you think it was worth it and you enjoyed the video, please consider supporting me on Patreon for as little as $1 a month and keeping the channel going. And if you don't want to do that, then just like, subscribe, click the bell, you know the drill. Thank you as always to my wonderful patrons who are very patient waiting for me to get this one out. It was a huge amount of work. So thank you in particular, but thanks to everybody who watched, and I'll see you next time.